Hello there, and welcome to Imagine Spotlights, a weekly video series co-produced by the American Diabetes Association and Beyond Type 1. I'm your host, Rob Howe, creator of the Diabetics Doing Things podcast. Every week on Imagine Spotlights, I'll talk to an amazing individual living with type 1 diabetes. Thank you for joining us, and let's get this party started. All right, campers, welcome back to Imagine Camp and the Imagine Spotlight series. I'm your host, Rob Howe, and we are here for Imagine Camp put on by the American Diabetes Association in partnership with Beyond Type 1, and I'm very, very excited. As usual, I'm always excited for my guests, but this one is a special close story to my heart because it's about diabetes and basketball, and my guest today is the last basketball player to play in the NBA with type 1 diabetes, Mr. Gary Forbes. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Rob. I appreciate it.
Of course, man. Super happy to have you here. And I think, just in general, you live with diabetes. You're a professional basketball player. You have been for a number of years. Let's kind of rewind back to how you came to join this type 1 diabetes family. Give us your diagnosis story.
My diagnosis story was after my freshman year in college. I had a pretty good year. At the University of Virginia, and I went home that summer to just be home with family for about a week. That week in between, you get off before we have to return back to training and stuff like that. And during the year, I was drinking these shakes that had a lot of sugar in it. My father, who's a diabetic, my father's a diabetic. My grandfather passed away from it. My nephew's a diabetic, so it's it runs in our family. And just being, I guess, a stubborn kid, not listening to my dad so much. I just kept drinking the shakes, and, I gained a lot of weight that year because I came into college, a frail kid, about 190 pounds. And after my freshman year, I was about 226, 225. So, with the, extreme, weightlifting program, as well as eating and just a new lifestyle. So I was able to gain that weight. And I went home that summer, and one of the initial signs of being a diabetic is just constant urination. So I was just constantly using the bathroom every single minute. I would drink water, and literally 5 seconds later I had to go to the bathroom. And I was checking my weight daily, and I was losing like 3-4 pounds a day. And I figured, something was off, but, diabetes didn't click in my head. I thought I had like a urinary tract infection or something like that. And on the ride to, I remember clearly on the ride to University of Virginia, where I had to go get tested with the doctors, my brother, the drive from Baltimore to, Virginia is about 2 hours. And it took us about like 4.5 hours because we were stopping every single minute. And he was just like, he had no clue, but when we got there, it was a tough, tough diagnosis for me to take in as a freshman in college with the aspirations of playing professional basketball. But obviously I got through it.
Yeah, man. And, you mentioned diabetes runs in your family. But being an athlete also runs in your family.
Yes.
Your father, if I'm not mistaken, was an Olympic athlete for the Panamanian team with diabetes. So was there ever a time, did you have a conversation with your dad after you were diagnosed about, what it was going to be like to be an athlete with diabetes?
No, what's crazy is, it's unfortunate. We didn't really have too many talks, too much in-depth talks about it. Being he was a weightlifter, Olympic weightlifter, and me being a basketball player, it's somewhat of two sports. Although I benefited from that because I'm a great lifter. I always enjoyed the weight room and stuff like that. But we never had in-depth talks about diabetes until obviously I was diagnosed with it. So I was very ignorant to it. To certain things that led up to it or that ran in my family.
So let's back up a little bit because I definitely want to talk about your career in college after you were diagnosed. But let's kind of way back up because you've been a basketball player almost all your life, and I know your background in New York is like one of that's like basketball mecca. That's like the place to grow up playing basketball. When did you know you wanted to be a basketball player, and when did you start playing?
Well, I was born in Panama, and I came over here to the U.S. when I came to New York when I was like about 4 years old. And I think around 3 years old, my father built a basketball hoop for us that we used to use in the house, and always he built it from hand. My father was also a welder on the at the Panama Canal, so he's great with building stuff. And I brought it over here to the U.S. and I would play every day. And my first time I ever saw Michael Jordan play, I initially just fell in love with the game of basketball. My brother, took me to the park, and we would spend hours and hours. And just something about the game of basketball. Like, I enjoyed the competition. I enjoyed the camaraderie of the teamwork and just everything around it.
Yeah, man. That was kind of how I got into the game as well. I just remember the first time watching Michael Jordan play basketball. I just got hooked from that, man.
Yeah, man, that's incredible, man. He did it so gracefully.
So going back to college, so you were, your freshman year, you were at Maryland,
No,
and
Virginia.
Virginia. Sorry, excuse me. And you're at Virginia, and you transferred at one point. What was your college career like after you were diagnosed with diabetes? Did you have any, challenges or any struggles with, management, or did you feel like it ran pretty smooth?
Well, my first year. Well, my first year was my sophomore. My first year playing with diabetes was my sophomore year at Virginia. I had like an up and down year just because I personally I just was going through some stuff. My mother was just sick. My nephew had also gotten diabetes and Crohn's disease that year. So it was like a tough year mentally for me, but that was the honeymoon period of being a diabetic. So I was still, able to eat some of the same things that I was eating pre-diabetes, and I wasn't taking as much insulin because my pancreas was still somewhat working at the time. So my first year playing at Virginia, I didn't really notice any, effects of it, or it didn't really like hinder me that much until I transferred to University of Massachusetts, where the honeymoon period was over, and I had to really can't really kind of focus on my eating, my health, because if I don't, I'm not going to play. And so it kind of went hand in hand. So can't do one thing without the other.
Yeah, I think that was one thing when I was diagnosed that was really helpful for me too, is that my doctors made it really clear, like, hey, you can you can pursue a life in basketball and pursue a career in basketball as long as you take care of your diabetes. So that was always kind of my motivation. Um, so you were one of the best. If you go look at the UMass record book, Gary Forbes' name is all in there. You were a great career at University of Massachusetts. After you graduated, you had a professional career in front of you, and with your eyes on the NBA. Did you ever feel pressure during that time to kind of hide your diabetes or not really talk about it?
I did somewhat, and I feel that was the Achilles heel of me being drafted, because I hid it from pretty much everyone. No one, I never talked about being a diabetic that much in college. I had maybe one interview it was like a small Massachusetts-based television interview, but nowhere did I broadcast that, because I felt like the world was pretty much ignorant to athletes, being diabetic and stuff like that, and being successful. So I remember, clearly, I remember my father was telling me to make sure these months leading up to the draft process, make sure you're eating right and doing the right things, get enough rest. And I pretty much did that. I had a great draft camp. I got MVP of Portsmouth. I got MVP of Orlando camp. So I felt like the basketball work was done. I felt like there was nothing else that I needed to do. And when the doctors of these teams, who I do have to I do give it to them, because they are investing millions of dollars in a commodity, myself. And they just, I guess, I felt that diabetes, or being a diabetic wouldn't be a successful investment for them. And it was kind of heartbreaking moment for me, just because I knew that was the reason. I had guarantees in the first round, and certain teams told me that, when, that team didn't take me, when everyone knew that, that was a perfect fit for me, everyone else kind of just fell off.
Do you feel like now, as you look back and as your career progressed, do you feel like the way that you performed over the years has changed some perspectives of people in the way that they view athletes with diabetes,
I
or at
think,
least
I
viewed
think,
yourself?
well, for sure, me. I think after the grind that I took and made it back to the NBA, getting jobs was pretty much easy. Well, jobs were pretty much easy getting it just based on my talent. And once teams had doctors, and they obviously had to get used to having a diabetic player. No team that I've ever went on had previously a diabetic athlete, and I was either their first. And it was like a learning period for them, as well as I had to teach them things, and obviously me being more of a educated as learning how to be a diabetic. But I don't think it was just going after that. It wasn't really tough because of the previous success that I've had playing diabetes.
In your journey between the time you graduated from UMass and went a little time overseas, a little time in what was then the development league, the D League in the NBA, what was it like to put on that jersey for the first time and see your last name on the jersey and walk out in the arena and just be in an NBA game and like finally check that box and say I'm an NBA player with diabetes. I'm Gary Forbes and I'm an NBA player with diabetes.
Man, like that whole process of the training camp, my first time ever getting invited to a training camp, with the Denver Nuggets in 2010. And I clearly remember I was in the hotel room, and I actually have it right here. I actually brought it out for this interview. And
all right.
In my in my little book of my scrapbook, and I wrote this in 2010. I don't see, you can see the date. October 4th, 2010. And it says, I will make the Denver Nuggets roster this year. So I had that, and I signed it, and I kept it, and I walked with it to training camp, practice every single day. And when it came to fruition, it was kind of, I wasn't really surprised. I was just like, obviously just extremely happy, but I kind of felt like I did that. I accomplished something. I did something that doctors didn't think was possible, or my parents probably didn't think was possible. My friends didn't think was possible. A lot of things, a lot of I guess a lot of challenges were against me to make that great transition of making an NBA.
Yeah, and I think even for people who casually watch the NBA, I don't think they understand how few people make the league, right? And there's only 360 spots.
Right.
Yeah, 450 spots total, right?
450 spots now, so it's real tough. There's a lot of players that played overseas and different countries that deserve talent wise to be in the NBA, but it's about fit. It's about very few chances to get in there.
And you didn't know this at the time, but about 50 miles south of Denver, I was my junior year of college was 2010, and when you signed with the Nuggets, I remember seeing the press release and reading it or seeing it on the news that a player with type 1 diabetes signed with the Denver Nuggets. And so there I was playing with type 1 diabetes in Colorado Springs, and when I saw that, I was like, man, Gary Forbes is in the league. He's playing with diabetes. Like maybe there's a chance that I could, continue to play basketball with diabetes. So, you didn't know it at the time, but man, you just taking that step and chasing that dream and making that happen was huge for me as well.
Right. And, it's been, I've had like a couple of stories where kids with diabetes have said that, my story just inspired them to actually like push or, keep, chasing their dreams. And, that's that makes me feel good. My mother, I think my mother one day, she was like crying, she wishes I never had diabetes. And I actually, told her like, I'm not really too, I'm not upset because I feel like I was, it happened. I'm a person, believes in faith. I believe that it was, I was put with this burden, for if you call it, to do something with it. There's nothing that can be put on your table that you can't handle if you have the right mentality and things like that of how you approach it. I'm a athlete living with diabetes. I work out every single day, and it doesn't look like I don't look like the normal diabetic, or I don't do the things that a normal diabetic would do. So I feel like most of the things is just how you mentally approach it.
And you know what? You wouldn't get to come to Imagine Camp if you didn't have diabetes either. So here we are
Exactly,
today.
exactly. I wouldn't be here today, man. I'm glad I am.
And I am too, man. And what's crazy about that story is it's really only the beginning. It was very early in your career, and now for the basketball terms, you're the vet now. You're the
Right,
you're the
right.
veteran. You've made your way around the world. Over the last 10 years, 10 years since 2010, since you wrote that note. What's it been like playing basketball all around the world and even representing your home country of Panama in international play? That's got to be a pretty experience.
Man, when I was looking back at my scrapbook the other day, and I'm just like, man, I've done a lot. Like maybe not so much, more so like things that I want to accomplish. I obviously want to play in the NBA for multiple years, and win a championship and do all those things that you initially dream of. But looking back, the people that I've met and the places that I've been have been beautiful experiences, and I wouldn't trade those experiences back for nothing, because it's led me here to where I am in my life, where I feel very good about the things that I'm going forward in, and things I want to do to leave a legacy, to leave a mark. Not only just Gary the basketball player, but so much more, as well as Gary the diabetic.
Yeah, man, and Gary the diabetic is he's got a pretty good audience today at Imagine Camp of kids who probably are thinking a lot like you were at that age, and have big dreams for their lives, and are living with diabetes but don't want to let that just define them. So if you were going to give advice to anybody who's out there listening who wants to chase their dream and wants to make it happen, what advice would you give them?
Man, I have so many notes, like at night, where I write in my, my note app on my phone. And I was thinking about, this interview, like something that I would leave, inspirational. I just feel like just your thoughts are your reality. Like if you initially think of something, like it's there. You just have to initially put in the work. I feel in my life that I'm gonna cure diabetes. I'm gonna be not taking any insulin. Due to the work that I'm gonna do, it's gonna be work. All it is work. One of the things I always say on my Instagram: all work is easy work. It's just you just have to do it. Nike, all these apps to just do it. All these mantras are there to to tell your mind that these things are accomplishable. If you just do it with no negative thought, no disbelief in your mind. There's no point in that. Why put that thought in your head? Like it should just be, if you have a goal, put that goal there. Simply just put in the work for it. And I'm a testament. I've seen it actually work. So disbelief. I don't feel nothing is impossible, because I've done something that I felt or other people felt was impossible, coming from Panama, growing up in the country that I grew up, to come to Brooklyn, New York, one of the toughest places to make it out of, to get a scholarship, to actually play against these top teams in the country, and to play with diabetes, to make it out of that. That's like a really great accomplishment.
Gary, I think a good question for that, a lot of our campers' parents may be interested in as well, is how do you treat your diabetes? What do you use to treat your diabetes? And how do you manage your blood sugars during practices and games when you're on the court?
Well, two of the products that I use Lantus insulin and Humalog insulin. Lantus is a long acting insulin, which I use at nighttime, and Humalog, depending on my blood sugar, is a sliding scale depending on what I eat and what my blood sugar is at the time. I use the one drop tester kit for my checking my blood glucose, and before games and stuff. Before games, I usually want to keep my blood sugar is anywhere from 120 to 150, 170 around that time, around that range. Um, I've never really had to. I never really had to check before the games because I always, before the games, I always have my blood sugar at a good level, and I know from just previous experiences and trial and error things, how to gauge my levels. And halftime I check again, and depending on what it was during college, take the glucose tablets or a slice of orange or things like that to to get it to where it needs to be.
And do you have like a routine, like with game days? Like, do you test at halftime as well, or are you pretty good judge of what your sugars are?
In the beginning, when I was first, learning, my routine and myself being a diabetic, I used to check before the games and halftime, and obviously I always check post game to see what it is. But after so many times of seeing it's been normal and having a good level, and I don't really drink a lot of like sugary stuff during during the games like Gatorades and things like that. But yeah, my sugar levels were always pretty normal during halftime. But I think it's really a big key to see where you are middle of the game.
Yeah, I think I didn't have a CGM, and I know you don't wear a CGM currently, but when I got one, I always wanted to know what my sugars did during a basketball game. So now that I wear a Medtronic CGM, and I wear my pump when I play now because I'm not playing at a very high level anymore, unfortunately. It's because you get washed up, Gary. It's so
I'm getting there, man. I'm getting there.
But I love to be able to look at that and see, because I always wondered, and I always kind of had an idea of where my sugars were, but it's cool to be able to look at the chart and see where they are now. Man, I love your all work is easy work Instagram stories, because it's always attached to something that looks really tough. Like you're like running up a crazy hill, or you're like doing some crazy workout on a football field somewhere, running and getting in shape. And I'm always like, man, if you keep that mentality that whatever it is in front of you is going to be easy, and that you're just going to do it no matter what. That's powerful, man. So yeah, thanks for spreading that positivity.
I might have to copyright that and put that on a t-shirt, man.
You've got to. I think we need the Gary Forbes t-shirts, man. Gary, man, thank you so much for coming to Imagine Camp, for being here for our campers, and for being an awesome example of living with diabetes that's very visible. And like you said, you've been all around the world and accomplished a lot of great things that I think anybody would say are things that they would go after and chase after. So thank you so much for being an awesome ambassador for people like me and people who are watching this all around the country at Imagine Camp. And thanks to the ADA and to Beyond Type 1 for bringing the Imagine Spotlight series together so that we could tell your story to all of our campers.
Definitely, thank you for having me, man. And I'm really excited about the next projects that I'm trying to do. Now I finished writing my first children's book. I'm just looking for some artists and graphic designers to help me bring the book to life. But it's a book of about 11 superhero kids who have illnesses of different sorts, and they're superheroes. And their mission is trying to do a lot of things to to save the world and to heal themselves. So I'm very excited about this project, this series. I aim to write 6 books, and hopefully it could be a TV show for all you campers to be watching soon. I want to thank the ADA and you guys for having me today. It's been a super pleasure.
Well, we're going to definitely follow you on whatever your next journey looks like. And hey, man, just again, thanks so much for being a part of Imagine Camp and for doing what you do.
Thank you.